What's up, everybody? Today let's tackle another excuse of why people say they can't or won't go vegan, and today that excuse is that it's natural to eat meat. And when people bring up this excuse, which happens quite a bit, there's usually a few points that come along with it, which is that humans are at the top of the food chain or the circle of life. They like to point to lions in nature and talk about how lions eat meat. They might point to us having canines as humans or talk about some other sort of biological or physiological trait that we have, or that we're omnivores. And I'll address each one of these things here in just a second, but first I'm going to address the more important part of this, which is even if something is natural, does that mean it's a good justification to do it? It's not. But first, let me welcome you to Vegan Yak, where I yak about all things vegan. So if you're looking for some information about veganism, then go ahead and subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell down below, so that way next week when another video comes out and I'm yakking about something else vegan, you'll be the first to know. So first things first, is something being natural a good enough justification to do that something? Well, let me know what you think in the comments down below, but for me personally, no, I don't think that that's a good enough justification. Just because something is natural or occurs in nature doesn't mean it's moral. Take a look at the lion example that people love to bring up. People love to say, well, but lions eat other animals in the wild. I mean, it's just a part of the food chain, it's just a part of the circle of life. And yeah, but lions in the wild also sometimes will murder other lion cubs and lionesses. Animals in the wild will rape other animals. I mean, do we really think this is the example we should be trying to imitate when it comes to deciding if something is immoral or moral? I mean, do you think that murder, rape, and eating babies is moral? I mean, just because something happens in nature doesn't mean that it's moral or something that we should be doing. And the inverse is true of that too. I mean, just because something is unnatural doesn't mean it's immoral or something that we shouldn't be doing. Hospitals aren't natural. Antibiotics, cancer treatment, and other medicines, all completely unnatural. I mean, in many cases, the natural thing would just be getting sick and dying. If you have a really bad headache, do you just go, well, that's natural, or do you take an aspirin? I mean, if you broke your leg and your bone was sticking out and you're bleeding everywhere, would you just go, well, let's see how this naturally plays out? Or do you go to the hospital and get an unnatural surgery and an unnatural cast? I mean, you're watching this video right now on your cell phone or your computer or TV or something. Those are all completely unnatural. Cars, planes, trains, boats, all unnatural. Clothes are completely unnatural, but I bet you're not naked right now. Actually, I don't want to bet that. Please keep that to yourself. But I'm sure you're getting the point here. If someone's going to use this as an excuse and say that they can't go vegan because it's unnatural, then by all means they should just give up all the other unnatural things in their lives. They should just go live out in the woods with no clothes and no technology, no phones or anything else to help them, no tools. And if they get a terminal illness, they should just let it take its course. I mean, this is of course not what I believe, but if you're going to continue to use this as an excuse to exploit animals, then What's especially ironic about this is when someone usually brings up this point, they're acting as if they're already eating naturally as a part of like the natural food chain. But in all reality, their food is about as unnatural as it gets. I mean, our animal food supply is entirely unnatural. We enslave billions of animals in unnatural, gigantic buildings. We artificially breed these animals with unnatural devices and technology. We feed the animals unnatural modified food that's been oftentimes, transported with unnatural transportation. We give these animals, antibiotics and other unnatural medicine to keep them alive. We kill the animals with unnatural technology and devices. We then store their chopped up bodies with unnatural things like refrigeration in buildings and stores. You then drive unnatural transportation to go pick up these animal products. You pay with unnatural money, and then you take it home and you cook them, which is entirely unnatural. I mean, if you want to be natural, then just be a lion, go out into the wild, catch an animal with your bare hands, tear its flesh with your teeth, and then just eat it completely bloody and raw. But I'd prefer you didn't. So hopefully you can see that addressing the points like canines and the food chain and all that sort of stuff is really pointless, because even if there were good points for it being natural, natural doesn't mean moral. And the reality is that we can survive and thrive without eating animals, without exploiting them for clothes, without exploiting them for entertainment and testing. So why kill trillions of animals every single year unnecessarily and unnaturally if we don't have to? Now, as far as canines go, canines have been talked about so much that I don't even feel like addressing it, but it keeps coming up, so I will. Canines are not a universal symbol when you take a look at the animal kingdom. Canines are not a universal symbol for animals eating other animals. I mean, just take a look at these mouths. Do you feel like they all have the same design or are designed for the same diets? And what land animal has the largest canines? Hippos. hippos which are largely herbivorous. And we can take a look at all these different types of traits, these biological and physiological traits, and we'll see that we share many of them with many different types of animals across the animal kingdom. So we can take a look at the digestive tracts, the teeth, the salivary glands, digestion duration, intestinal length. We can take a look at all of these different things. And when you do, you'll see that we lean a little bit probably closer towards herbivores rather than carnivores, somewhere in the middle there, and really actually closer to chimps and bonobos, our closest relatives, and their diets consist of like 97% plants. But again, none of this really matters because we have a large body of scientific evidence that will show us that we can eat entirely plant-based, and what is natural doesn't dictate our morals. Then in addition to these traits, you have the top of the food chain argument, which we already touched on a little bit. And again, we're so far removed from the natural food chain that I don't really think there's an argument here. But another point to kind of bring up is just like, imagine yourself in the food chain out in the wild naturally, without the tools, without the technology. Do you still really feel like we as human beings would be the top of the food chain? I mean, how do you catch your food, with your bare hands and with these claws and stuff? I mean, could you outrun like some of these animals that are trying to eat you? Do you think you could fight like a bear, a cheetah, a pack of wolves with your bare hands and your razor sharp canines? I mean, like top of the food chain? I don't know about that. Again, how we get our food is so far removed from the natural food chain that I think it's kind of silly, but even if we are at the top of the food chain, especially with our intelligence and our technology and everything, I think it just makes an even greater argument for veganism. I mean, if we really have all of this intelligence and technology and power, should we be using it to kill trillions of animals every single year unnecessarily? I mean, should we be using all of this power to destroy habitats entirely just so we can have a cow to eat, even though we don't have to? I mean, I get saying that we're at the top because we have all of this intelligence and technology and everything, but should we be using all of that to kill trillions of innocent sentient beings every year when we don't have to? It sounds like the argument becomes more of this like, well, just because we can, because we're at the top of the food chain. Like a might makes right type of argument, but just because we can? I mean, should we use that type of logic for humans that people think are less than that, less intelligent or something? I mean, just because we can do something doesn't mean we should. And if we're really that smart and really have all of this power, then shouldn't we be using that to change our diets and lifestyle to reduce suffering? I mean, we do that for other animals. We do it for dogs and cats and for whales and dolphins. So why shouldn't we just fight for all of the animals? I mean, if we really are that smart and we really are at the top of the food chain, we have all of this power, why not use it for good? If you're looking for more discussion on the common vegan excuses, then you can check out the rest of the playlist here. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stop looking at what you can't do and start looking at what you can do. Thanks.